You do not want to communicate with your assistant over email. Email is a wasteland of distraction for you and your assistant. Second pro tip, I think everyone knows this by now, but if you're going to delegate to an assistant, strongly consider using Loom or some other screen recording tool. Thirdly, everyone wants to know, what should I pay to get an assistant? We've hired over 750 assistants now. And my view is that if you are here for the thrilling pursuit of excellence, you need an assistant who you can count on to be bulletproof.
If you want to go from doing the work to leading the work, this is your podcast episode. Tim Francis of GreatAssistant.com has every framework known to mankind for finding the right VA, to figuring out what tasks you should delegate, how much you should pay, and everything in between. He's helped over 750 entrepreneurs, and today he is helping us do more by doing less. With me, Charles Alexander, for small business owners, startups, and busy folks.
To become your mini-me, the only way I know how to get that kind of assistant, and I've tried all over the world, is to go domestic. So if you're in the US and Canada, you're getting an assistant in the US or Canada. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, get someone in Australia or New Zealand. Want someone similar, same time zone, language, business culture. It solves so many problems. And for that kind of assistant, as of right now, you can get them for $22 to $25 per hour. And they have the ceiling of potential to do things like take over your email inbox or calendar, travel planning, even posting to social media, helping with a wide range of different skills. So those are my 3 quick hits for you.
Boom. All right. That's the end of the podcast, folks. Thanks for coming, Tim. It'd be awesome. It's the 2-minute podcast with Charles Alexander. Look, dude, that's awesome. 3 quick tips. I love all of them. Anybody listening? And so I alternate between guest podcasts and solo. And a lot of the solo, I've covered a lot of the same things that I'm doing it right because Tim just said so. But going back to the very first one, and I've got a whole list of things here we're going to come back to. I'm going to come back to these real quick. DMing, I'm so glad you said to stop emailing back and forth with your virtual assistant, primarily because we spend a third of our day in email, which is bananas. You should not be doing that at all. It should be something you do after lunch and before you go, shut it down for the day. And if you can outsource most of that, great. But if your VA is in there, it's just lost with everything else. So how did you guys come to the Shanti tool?
So this is a really good way to make decisions generally, is instead of going out into the Wild West and just trying to bump into whatever tools might be out there, is to actually stop and do just a few minutes of front-loaded work where we can say, what's my criteria for success? So we came up with what our winning criteria was. We want end-to-end encryption. We want an easy user interface. We want to make sure that it has an app that can be downloaded across all devices. Doesn't matter whether it's Mac or PC, iPhone or Android, et cetera, et cetera. So we came up with a list of, I think it was like 12 or 15 requirements. Mm-hmm. And then my assistant took those requirements, did a bunch of research, generated a list of, I think, like I said, almost 20 tools.
Yeah.
And incredibly, there really were not that many that met all of our requirements. So we road tested 3 inside the team. I guess technically 4. We used we did Slack, we did Convo, we did WhatsApp, and we also did this strange tool we'd never heard of before called Shanti. And lo and behold, Shanti was the only one that all 7 people on our team approved of and met all of our requirements. If I'm not mistaken, I think Slack doesn't even have the end-to-end encryption level that Shanti has. And that was kind of surprising. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So that's how we did it. And I think that's a lot of decision-making in life, is instead of just like throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks, is kind of checking in and saying, what does success look like? And if we can define success at the outset, that sure removes a lot of the headache and heartache that comes from just kind of bumbling through other kind of, research.
So what I've been doing, and is different than what I think what you're explaining, but we do all of our communication through Asana. It's a project management tool. So as soon as I'm assign a task there, that's where I want all of the communication is within that task. So they're not asking me a random question in the inbox that goes to something else. We talk and communicate within that one thing. But the point is that we're not all over the place. Really I think I stole this from Cal Newport. I don't know if you've read Deep Work.
Big fan.
Oh my God. Yeah. A World Without Email. But his whole point was get out of the inbox. And it doesn't mean you quit communicating. Maybe you add 5 other ways to do it, which sounds, overwhelming, but you're in you're going to that project management tool or that communication tool for that specific reason. You're not going to this one catch-all that will take you and, basically sweep your day away before you ever get started.
I heard Nick Sonnenberg define an email inbox as an unlimited to-do list that anyone in the world can assign tasks to.
Look, dude, I've often used this, I don't even know what you call it, allegory, anecdote. If there was a magic genie that could appear to you, I don't know, 25 years ago now, and says, hey, Charles, hey, I'm going to give you instant access to everybody else to give them to-dos, but the trade-off is that everybody gets to give you an unlimited number of to-dos, and you have to check it multiple times a day, every day. Would you make that trade? And you'd say, no, Genie, I don't like this. Like, oh, funny. We're going to do it anyways. And this is going to be your whole life. You'd be pretty upset, but now we've taken it on voluntarily.
Right. Agree wholeheartedly.
So away from magic genies into the second point you just made about Loom. Also, I love that. I've been teaching a lot of my clients that anytime you want to outsource something, you've got to create the video first. It's non-negotiable. If you are a landscaper and you're not tied to your desk, walk around with your iPhone showing somebody how to start the mower, hop on, and but everything else we do should be a screen record. I love Loom. I've also, something simple like Zoom, and maybe it doesn't even matter. Just record it and then get the transcription. And then, my gosh, there's 1,000,001 AI little tools you can use to drop that off with somebody, and you'll never have to guess again. How did you guys land on Loom versus the other 18 bells and whistles out there?
I think we've just been at it for so long. I was originally doing calls with my assistant on Skype, not Zoom. Yeah, that
was a verb at one point. I want to Skype you.
Yeah, right. And so I've been operating remote for almost 15 years, and so Loom was just one of the earlier tools. I don't know if you remember Jing. Jing used to be. Do you remember Jing?
Yeah.
Yeah, from TechSmith. So Jing was the tool that we used, and I'd probably still be using it to this day, but they discontinued it. So it was just so happened around that time when Jing stopped being supported with updates, and it kind of got deprecated out of the Mac world.
Sure.
Loom happened to be coming in. It stepped in, and we've just been using it ever since.
So excellent tool. There should never be a situation where you tell somebody to do something that you shouldn't have just recorded because of, you're right. My father-in-law, I've told this before, my father-in-law, who birthday happens to be today, not when you're listening, dear listener, because I record way in advance, but it's today. Turned 74, same as my father. The first thing either one of these dudes do, and they are not tech savvy in the least, but they love coming to my house and pointing out all the things that are probably wrong. Looking at the dash of my car, wanting to see what those lights mean. The first thing either one of them want to do is to go to YouTube, because then somebody can walk them through the whole thing. If that's what their solution is, that's what everybody's solution is. Mm-hmm. And then number 3, paying somebody. And that's always a big question I get, because people hear, I can pay these ridiculously low rates. And I've got a wide variety of VAs that, I've worked with over the years, and it just depends on the skill level. But you're talking about like the right-hand man, girl Friday, insert buzzword here, that the person is going to be your mini-me, your persona is going to jump in, walk, talk, sound like you. Get somebody in your time zone, right?
I don't think that would be the same time zone, but if you're somewhere in the US or Canada, we need someone in the US or Canada, because it's similar, same time zone, language, and business culture.
Yeah.
And I oftentimes get the question, Tim, should my assistant impersonate me? Like, should my assistant reply to emails as if they're me? No, I don't think so. It's just disingenuous. It doesn't land well for me. However, I do want my assistant to answer on my behalf. Years ago, I invented this, and some other experts have since taken this and promoted it as if it's their own, but they all learned it from me. I call it my inbox freedom preamble. What that is when my assistant's in my inbox and my assistant receives an email, my assistant will first say, Charles, this is Denise, Tim's assistant. I got your email before Tim did, and I thought you'd appreciate the speediest possible reply.
Ooh.
Yeah. Then after that, whatever the replies, yes, Tim would be more than happy to be a part of your podcast. He's available these days. So
that's how you and me ended up here with Denise.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I just think a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid of, like, well, are my clients or my investors or advisors or whoever going to think that I'm like pawning them off on my assistant? I get that is an available perspective. My perspective is quite different. My perspective is I want to be as responsive as possible with the highest attention to detail, best possible workflow for anybody who's writing me, and I might be writing them. And the fact of the matter is, like, I'm a massive deep work guy. If I did not have an assistant, you might not hear from me for a couple of days.
Right.
And that really gums things up. So to have an assistant to provide way better service than I can provide makes everybody so much happier. And when I do private consulting one-on-one, I've sat on a bunch of boards and whatnot. I charge $1,000 an hour. And to have clients who are paying $1,000 an hour, like, you might think, oh my God, they only want to talk to me, Tim, because they're paying me all this money. Well, what I came to discover is that they love talking to Denise because they know they can get an answer from Denise like within hours, not days.
Yeah.
And every single one of them, all I just told them in the beginning was, you guys, I'm a big fan of deep work. I only check my email every couple days. I'll reply to you if I see something. In between those time periods, though, you're going to hear from my assistant, Denise, because we're committed to the fastest possible reply with the highest possible experience. Does that make sense? And everyone's like, oh, well, yeah, I never thought of it that way. That sounds great. And everyone's good with it. So if anybody's got that fear, just use that little inbox preamble, communicate with your people, and you should be fine. The one exception, I had an aunt once rip me a new one because my assistant replied about Thanksgiving on my behalf. And my aunt is like, you're not so fancy that you can't talk to me about Thanksgiving. I was like, ooh, this is a very bad look for me. So family members, maybe you want to answer personally.
Tim comes rolling in, is like, oh, here's Mr. Cranberry Salad. Oh, did your VA get that for you? Oh, good to see you, Tim. Dude, I love the preamble. I'm going to be one of these people that steals it from you. I'll give you credit when I do that and make it part of my program, because I got that question the other day. Well, when my VA replies, should they say it's me or tell them it's them? You know, hey, by the way, this is Janie Charles's VA. So you're not having them act as an imposter. They're answering the questions they can answer. I have never had anybody get upset over that. And if they did get upset, great. We've got a qualifier. Here's a client we should probably be firing anyways, because this is just a red flag of things to come. And I'm going to take what you mentioned a second ago. We'd already talked about Cal Newport once, but Deep Work, great book. I've read it, reread it. That was a book I reread during the pandemic that caused me to create this program I have now, how to create a 4-day work week in 90 days or less. And dude, every day during the pandemic, I was reading this thing and I was making notes all around the margins. It looked like a madman. If somebody picked it up, they would have thought I had created a ransom note. But the whole concept is that you're working for big chunks at a time on things that only you can do, that put you in a flow state of 90 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours of something you want to create. That does not mean you get to bounce around like a pigeon pecking a lever and hopefully a pellet coming out. That means you're locked in doing that thing. So in doing that, a lot of the clients I have, we talk about, finding, tracking your time, finding the things in there that only you should be doing, and then everything else you get batched, outsourced, you automate, you eliminate, you delegate. How do you tell somebody how to identify the tasks that they should be outsourcing?
Many years ago, I had a great shower thought. It just kind of descended into my brain. And it dawned on me that the medical community has done a fabulous job of knowing what should be done by a surgeon, what should be done by a nurse, what should be done by a phlebotomist or an anesthesiologist or an OR manager.
Look at you knowing all the big words.
So if we were to process map surgery, let's say it's 500 steps. If we were to circle the steps that only the surgeon can do, Charles, you would realize that those steps fall into just 3 buckets. Okay. The first bucket is strategy. Strategy for a surgeon is knowing what procedure we're going to use based on the injury or the illness. Strategy for the surgeon is also after the surgery, looking at the recovery and healing to see if we're on track or if we got to adjust some medication or adjust some physical therapy or something like that. So that's the first bucket, is strategy. The second bucket is high-level skill. The surgeon actually holding the scalpel, performing the incision, and doing the procedure. Only the surgeon can do that. The third thing that a surgeon does is what I call high-level access. High-level access might be before the surgery happens, only that surgeon has high-level access to other surgeons to get their opinion, to say, hey, can you get lunch with me? We're going to look at this MRI together. The janitor can't ask the neighboring surgeon to lunch, but the surgeon can ask the surgeon, right? Another instance of high-level access is only the surgeon has access to their medical license to perform certain procedures and sign off on certain documents. So sometimes it's access. I mean, if you, Charles Alexander, you're the only one who has access to your signing authority on bank accounts or your face and voice.
Right.
Maybe down the road with AI, you're going to replicate that. Maybe you will. But for right now, that technology is still developing. So that is a high-level access activity for you. So I call this concept surgeon in the room. I want entrepreneurs to be doing only surgeon in the room work, which is strategy, high-level skill, high-level access. And anything that's not that needs to be delegated to others. Now, what are some categories of tasks that you might want to delegate to others? I would say setup, coordination, maintenance, reporting, basic research, basic errands, tech support, customer support, just to name a few. Now that becomes customized based on the industry. Like, what is surgeon in the room work for a financial planner is going to be different than a psychologist, is going to be different than someone doing e-commerce, for example. But if you use that framework of surgeon in the room and you look at your day, sounds like you're coaching people to do a time study. Sure. You just take that surgeon in the room approach, you will be amazed at how much happier, productive, prosperous, et cetera, that you get to be relative to the time of your day, that the volume of your time each day spent on surgeon in the room. And I think that there's also, for entrepreneurs, a very critical distinction between future work, what I call future work, and legacy work. So legacy work is anything that's related to things from the past. Legacy work is very important because it's not only things from the past, but it's legacy work in the sense that we are judged on the quality of our output. And so our legacy depends on making good on the client contracts, making sure that podcast episode actually gets out. Future work, on the other hand, would be like us recording this podcast. We're recording something new, but creating the show notes, that's legacy work. Right. Coming up with the artwork is legacy work. Getting it uploaded is legacy work. Getting the copy in an email broadcast is legacy work. Sending that email out to your following is legacy work. It's all work related to things from the past. Pulling bank statements to send to a bookkeeper, legacy work. Doing the fulfillment on any services that we've sold, legacy work. All legacy work. So we kind of end up with an XY axis diagram where, left to right, we've got future work versus legacy work. And then top to bottom, we've got surgeon in the room down to non-surgeon in the room work. And anything that is future work in the surgeon in the room quadrant, I'm telling you, the more that you're doing that work, the happier and more prosperous you're going to be. And the more you can delegate the legacy work and the non-surgeon in the room work, also the happier, more prosperous you're going to be.
And using this podcast episode is a great example. Me interviewing you, I'm the surgeon. I'm the only one that can do it. After that, and I think we had this conversation earlier, I use Asana. I have a great VA that does the editing here, just assign it to her. There's the SOP and she knows how to download the video and go editing and put the bumpers on it and get the transcription and get the show notes and the name of it and upload it. And there's a dozen different things. And I did the first several so I could learn how to do it, but then decided I don't need to be doing this like at all. I need to practice what I preach.
Yeah. So a couple of things there. One is sometimes strategy is R&D. If I don't know, what the strategy should be, then go and do the thing. So Charles, I'm so happy that you personally did the grind work of the first 20 episodes or whatever. That's not low level work. That's very high level work because it's research and development. That's very, very important. The other thing is sometimes you'll find that neither you nor your assistant are a surgeon in the room on a particular topic. So we got to go find someone who is. So perfect example, I've delegated meal service to my assistant. So I actually have all my lunches and dinners just delivered to me. I use a service called Snap Kitchen. There's also Factor 75. There's other kind of meal services across America and Canada. And that's great. However, how do we know what meals to purchase? Well, I'm not a registered dietitian, and Snap Kitchen is not going to tell me exactly what to order based on my macros and based on my activity level. We need a surgeon. So I went and got a registered dietitian. We did like 3 sessions, and the RD asked me about my lifestyle, my goals, and et cetera, et cetera. She came up with the macros and the calories that I needed to eat per week. And so then after that, she and I, by that I mean the RD and I, the registered dietitian and I, we built a menu for the week. We built a menu, and then from there, we looked at Snap Kitchen together, and we found the right meals. So I have the right macros, calories, and variety that I'm looking for to my taste. Yeah. And now the formula is figured out. I hand that off to my assistant. My assistant's the one that looks at my travel schedule and says, how many days is Tim going to be in Austin versus not Austin? Is he going to have guests who are going to want some food or not? Is he speaking? Is he networking? Is he going out to certain events? And so therefore he doesn't need as many meals. And Denise manages that and babysits that. And if something bad happens, she's the one that gets on the customer service phone line instead of me to make it right, and on and on and on. It's completely delegated. So sometimes if neither you nor your assistant are the surgeon in the room, we got to go get a surgeon to help us out. Denise
has to get on there and says, Tim said no sesame seeds.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Funny you mentioned that. I remember listening to Tony Robbins talking about automating things, and he automated what he ate forever. And he only ate salmon and salad, every day for X number of days in a row. He didn't find the surgeon in the room and almost got mercury poisoning because he kept eating the same thing.
I remember that.
So look, we're getting into, let's say I've figured out, well, let me back up, ask a smarter question here. How do you tell people how to identify their tasks? I mean, do they just get to sit down and think only I should be doing this, or do they need to do it as they go? Like I need to track what I'm doing throughout the course of the day, or is it easier than that? And I just need to sit down and think of what I'm doing. And then anytime I do a new task that isn't surgeon related, then I start creating an SOP. What do they do?
So I'm going to describe a 3-step process, and anyone can go to greatassistant.com/3 steps. And that's the number 3, not the word 3. So Great Assistant, singular, greatassistant.com/3 steps, plural. And on that page, what you'll see is we define the 3-step method to figure out what to delegate and how to delegate it. So we do recommend a time study. If a person just wants to go simple paper and pen, that's fine. We actually also have a spreadsheet that people can download right from that page. I think where a lot of time studies fall short is they'll talk about what am I doing every 10 minutes or 15 minutes, which is fine. However, the user, like the entrepreneur, will say email or meetings or travel. And that's good to know what the context is or the tool is that we're using, but it actually doesn't give us a level of specificity to know if it can actually be delegated or not.
Okay.
Right? Because if I say meeting or email or driving, that doesn't tell me, is that email helping my assistant reset their username and password, which is very low level and someone should be doing that, not me? Or is that email an email from an attorney saying, hey, here's this $100,000 lawsuit, or your accountant saying you owe this amount to the IRS. Do you agree? Right? So email is not specific enough. So we have one column that's tool or context. So that might be, again, meeting, Zoom call, email, or whatever. The second column next to that, though, actually says activity. So I could say I'm in email and I am talking to attorney, or I'm in email and I'm resetting the password. So that's really important in a time study. So that's step 1 is time study. Really, we're just looking to generate an inventory of activities. The second step, once we have our inventory of activities, like, hey, where's my time going, is to use something I invented called the 7 yes test. It's a series of 7 questions that anyone can ask of any task. And if you get a no on any of those 7 questions, you've got 3 options. 1, you can unpack the task. Or 2, you can add supervision to the task. Or 3, you can pick a different task altogether. And I think that 2 things that entrepreneurs really struggle with, one is unpacking tasks into the right size and difficulty. And the second is externalizing their brain into what is it that I actually want to define and design and get done here. So I'll quickly give you the 7 questions from the 7 yes tests. So I'm not leaving people hanging. So the first question is this task a $10 to $20 an hour task? So we want this to be lower difficulty, especially at the beginning with an assistant. So let's say, for example, let's take that example of sending an email broadcast. Okay. Is sending an email broadcast to your following, is that a $10 to $20 an hour task? Well, it actually isn't, because at some point we got to write the copy in the body of the email. And that's a skill to pick a good headline, right? Well, that's like a $40 to $50 an hour task. Okay, great. So what were our 3 options? Our 3 options are unpack, supervise, or pick something else. So in this case, we're going to unpack. So instead of saying, I'm going to delegate all of sending an email broadcast, I'm going to strip out the part that says writing the email or coming up with the strategy of what we're going to say to whom and what the call to action is. We're going to take all that out. And what's left is just publishing the email. So now all the assistant is doing is taking the copy the entrepreneur has given them. Going into Infusionsoft, ActiveCampaign, MailChimp, Aweber, whatever it is, fighting with the WYSIWYG editor to make sure the bold stays bold. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Dude, it looks like it's been through a boggle tournament by the time it's got back around through the test email.
Exactly. Sending the test email, clicking all the links, make sure they go to the proper destination page, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And that is all $10 to $20 an hour work. So perfect. So we've made it through the first of the 7 questions of the 7 yes tests. The second question, does this happen at least once per week? Well, if you are only sending 1 email broadcast per quarter and you're going to spend, say, an hour developing some training and training your assistant, you're only going to get an hour back of your time once every 90 days. So that's not so hot. Now, on the flip side, if you're sending 2 email broadcasts every single week, all of a sudden it makes a world of sense now for you to put an hour into training an assistant on how to do the task, because by the end of the first week, you're going to be break even on your return on effort, your return on time. By the second week, you've doubled your ROT. And as long as that activity keeps happening, your ROI actually becomes infinite because it's happening so often, it's worth the effort. Third question, is there room for error? I don't always want my assistant to just take care of everything they know how to take care of. Like if the IRS says you owe $100,000, I don't want my assistant to be like, oh, I know how to do that. We're going to go transact $100,000. No. No room for error on that. If we send it to the wrong person, it might be very tough to get that $100,000 back if we send it to the wrong person. So in this case, I'm going to add supervision, right? That was one of our options. Do I unpack? Do I add supervision? Or do I pick something else? So that's all about avoiding any big mistakes. Question 4, can 1 rep be completed in 20 to 60 minutes? Question 5, does this require you, the delegator or the entrepreneur, to create minimal training? 6, does it require minimal learning by the assistant? I think it's a mistake to throw an online course at an assistant and say, study this and figure it out. Total mistake. Okay. And then 7th question is, are you already doing it? In the 750 plus entrepreneurs we've helped, I've often heard entrepreneurs say, oh, I'm so excited. Now that I'm going to have an assistant, I'm going to launch a podcast. Right? I'm going to start a YouTube channel now that I finally have this time. No. If you don't know how, if you're not already doing something yourself, you don't know how to train it. You don't know how to guess how long it's going to take. You don't know what good quality of work looks like. You don't know how to estimate the difficulty of the time. And worst of all, you're not actually getting any of your time back if you delegate it because you weren't doing it in the past. So by picking tasks that you're already doing and getting those off your plate, now that frees you up to go be surgeon in the room to figure out how to do the podcast or the YouTube channel or the whatever. So those are the 7 questions of the 7 yes test.
I couldn't tell you the number of times I have people that will do that, but with a salesperson. I'm like, great, I'm going to hire this salesperson. I'm going to get rid of all this. Well, how many of you said, well, I haven't really gotten on track yet or haven't done this? Like, you haven't sold any. How the hell is somebody else going to sell it?
Right. Yep. Absolutely. The third step in our 3 steps to delegate is another concept I invented called 360 delegation. Again, a few other so-called experts out there have taken this idea and not giving credit, but I assure you I invented this and I've got it trademarked with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Organization office. And 360 delegation, I once showed it to someone from the US military and they said, wow, this would be good enough to go to battle. That's not the intent. I mean, sending an email broadcast is not a matter of life and death, whereas going to the battlefield is. But very reassuring to know that this has a very high ceiling of potential. So in 360 delegation, we're looking to delegate the vision, the resources, and the definition of done of whatever we want.
The definition of done.
Yes. And we can create a 360D by going into Slack or Shanti and just putting it in a message. You can create a 360 delegation by creating a Google Doc and sending that to your assistant. Heck, I've even been in the passenger car of a vehicle and something came up and I had to delegate something to my assistant. I called her and left a voicemail message. I said, the vision is this, the resources is that, and the definition of done is that. 3 hours later, the task was done to perfection. Oftentimes delegating where it breaks down is there's errors that happen or there's tons of changeover. So if an assistant doesn't understand and they have to ask you for help, or they don't have access to a password, or they don't have access to a certain account, or they don't have access to a Google Doc or something, every time they have to stop, we're bringing in inefficiency. And now they have to interrupt you, which creates inefficiency. And then you got to re-interrupt them, which creates more inefficiency. We need this assistant to be effective basically just by reading your 360D. A 360D or a 360 delegation is like the 20 minutes that saves you 20 hours. It's so fantastic. And it's such a great tool. I actually invented something called 360dwriter.com. So if you go to 360, the letter D and the word writer, 360dwriter.com, it'll actually take you to a custom chat GPT that I created, and it'll help you write delegations using AI to speed up how fast you can delegate things to your assistant. So use 360dwriter.com. It'll help you write the 360 delegation, copy and paste that into the Google Doc or the whatever chat you're going to use, and your assistant's effectiveness is going to go through the roof. So those are the 3 steps. All 3 can be found on an article I wrote at greatassistant.com/3 steps.
3 steps. While you were telling me that, I already went to the lead page, opted in, and I assume it's sitting in my inbox now.
Great. Yeah.
So in looking at outsourcing and all of this stuff, do you have like a cheat sheet for creating SOPs?
Great question. So SOPs, or standard operating procedures, I think a lot of entrepreneurs go overboard, and I think they make them too early, and I think they make them too often. If a business is less than $1 million in revenue, it's still finding its footing on what its unique process is, who it's serving, who's going to do it on the team. And I think they would be far better served to focus on marketing, sales, and product development rather than operationalizing and documenting the whole company. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. And actually, a 360 delegation is way faster, way more flexible than going full bore on SOPs. I would say once you've done a 360D, your assistant's done the task a handful of times, and we're clear on the vision, resources, and definition you've done, then maybe it makes sense. If we're repeating this 360D over and over and over again, at that point, it can make sense to add in some SOPs to support the 360D. And, I'll give you an example. It's like, if I were to create an SOP on booking a hotel room, the SOP might sound something like log into hotels.com. In the top right corner, click the red button and sign in. In the left sidebar, move the sliders for price, input the city, input the star rating, and input the budget. But Charles, what now? Because the assistant's going to see 38 different hotels. It's no longer a linear process. It's no longer a read, do checklist of linear activities. There's too much deviation and if this, then that. So instead of an SOP, I would write a 360D, and I would include something that we call decision-making guidelines. Our shorthand for that is a DMG. And I would say, you know what? It doesn't bother me whether you get me a hotel or a short-term rental.
Sure.
Doesn't bother me whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, Hotels Tonight, Hotels.com, TripAdvisor. It like literally go wherever you want. Here's my DMGs. Number 1, I want to spend between $100 and $200 per night. I want it to be within a 10-minute walk of my destination if I'm speaking or attending a workshop. If it's going to be an Airbnb, I want to have the whole place to myself. I don't want it to be just a room. And if it is going to be an Airbnb, I need the appearance to look like this. And I might go into Airbnb, grab pictures of 3 or 4 kind of apartments or units that meet my taste. Last thing I might say is, I need at least a 3.5 or 4-star rating, whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, or hotels.com. So I can give my, and I'd like you to use my American Express ending in, these digits to purchase. And I can give those 5 or 6 DMGs, decision-making guidelines, to an assistant, and they are free to go anywhere on the internet and get this done. And they're not constrained by the specificity, the unnecessary specificity of an SOP in that situation.
Tim said, I need the temperature to be exactly 69.5 degrees, rose petals on the bed, and a bottle of Jim Beam Black. Neat. So look, once you've done that or doing that, you're not emailing this back and forth. And you've mentioned, you're not doing this. Are you doing this directly in, and I'm butchering the name, Chanty or Shanti? It's with a C.
It's like chanting, like a Gregorian chant. Yeah.
Are you putting it directly into there, or are you using a project management tool?
So if it's going to be something that happens regularly, which in the very beginning, we do want to pick tasks that happen regularly in our lives, then I'm actually putting in a Google Doc so it can live and be easily recalled. Remember, Google Drive is driven by Google, the world's #1 search engine. So finding documents is much faster there than in, your hard drive or Dropbox or something else. So Google Drive with a Google Doc is typically where we're doing that. If it's going to be more one-off, maybe once my assistant's been working with me for quite some time and it's more of a one-off situation, then I'll just put it directly in Shanti, and that seems to do the trick for us. Good
deal. Look, man, I'd love to sit here and chat with you for another 2 hours just for my own purposes. We're 36 minutes in, and it's been fan-friggin-tastic. I always end this thing with a little bit of a twist, or at least on topic of do more by doing less. So all of this right now, it's probably going to be a tough question for you to answer, but Tim, what's one thing right now, or a couple of things right now, you should be personally or professionally doing less of?
For me personally right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for me right now, I've already, I have a great assistant. She's been with me for 5 years. So she's taking over like everything from email to calendar to travel to, goodness gracious. She even runs payroll for the company. We have 7 team members, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, I'm careful to say that I should be doing something less. Okay. Because to me, my job is to say, what does the business need next? Right. Irrespective of my unique ability or my zone of genius, like, imagine a husband and wife, baby's crying in the middle of the night. The husband does not get to nudge the wife and say, well, I'm not going to feed the baby because that's not my zone of genius.
Right.
How would that go? Right. So to me, I view entrepreneurship as a never ending series of moments of surrender, where I'm surrendering to, okay, what does the business need next? And how can I go and figure that out? So just recently, I R&D'd for about 6 months on creating the client success coach role in my company. And so we hired someone, I've been training them for 90 days. And just 2 weeks ago, I'm no longer doing coaching, which is wonderful because I've now handed that off.
Gotcha.
Next role I'm going to delegate is sales. But should I delegate that yet? We don't have quite the lead volume to justify it. So from like a pure kind of like math and logic perspective, would it be better if I was only doing lead gen and I didn't have to do any sales? I guess, yeah. However, what the business needs right now is for me to be doing sales part-time and doing lead gen part-time. So I think that, there's a perfect lesson in every single moment. And maybe I'm being a little spiritual and woo about it to say that, everybody listening to this, you're right on time. You're right on time. You're doing exactly what you should be doing. And let's also be conscious about, is this the highest leverage item that I could be doing? I think that a lot of questions get answered if we ask ourselves, what is the opportunity cost? So for example, for people who are very terrified to delegate their email inbox to an assistant, and I'm going to assume for a second you have an assistant that's similar, same time zone, language, business culture, wants a long-term opportunity, is someone you trust, has been with you for a while. That's a lot of qualifiers. But let's say you do have that great assistant in place, then really all that's missing is getting over the mental hurdle of control and trust. So my question becomes, what is the opportunity cost? What are you missing out on by refusing to delegate your email inbox. And I know that one of the most scary quotes I've ever seen in my life, it chills me every single day, is hell is meeting the man I could have been.
Ooh.
So if I get to the pearly gates and the good Lord says, well, Tim, you could have been, I don't know, on Shark Tank, or you could have started an orphanage, or you could have, but instead you chose to be in your email inbox all day and you never wrote that book, or you never started that TV show or whatever. I'm going to be real regretful. I'm going to be very regretful of how I chose to organize myself in my life. Now, yes, you need the right kind of assistant, and you need to get connected to what is most important to you. And if it's more important to you to control, then find a way to trust and delegate, then just understand the costs you're paying. Last thing I'll say is just my why reason is the thrilling pursuit of excellence. I've been so blessed to have the gift of life from the divine. I've had amazing teachers help me, and I can thank my parents to the cows come home for giving me what they've given me. I want to look at all three of those kind of groups, the divine, my parents, and coaches that I've had. And I want to say, I took the rock and I ran with it, and I left nothing on the field. So that to me is what getting an assistant is all about. It's not about getting your time back. It's not about getting an assistant. It's about fulfilling our potential in our lifetime. And that's never going to happen if we're stuck in our email inbox all day.
Good call. Good way to end it. And I think Denise said that you might have a couple of things you want to drop on us on the way out. Not just how do you get in contact with Tim, but something else as well.
Yeah. If someone's interested in booking a discovery call to see that, to see if getting our kind of assistant makes sense, you can head over to greatassistant.com. There's a green button there. It says apply now. And that's certainly, it's about 45 minutes usually. And usually we get a pretty clear idea even faster than that if it makes sense or not. So you can check that out there. And then the article I shared earlier is at greatassistant.com/3 steps, the number 3 and the word steps with an S at the end. And hopefully that helps out everyone to get better at seeing what they can delegate and getting it off their plate so they can fulfill their potential too.
Good deal, Tim. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Don't take off just yet. I've created a new program just for you, helping overworked entrepreneurs create their very own 4-day work week in 90 days or less. Look, if you'd rather spend more time with family, friends, traveling, exercising, having the time to do what you want instead of, putting out never-ending fires, tackling another to-do list, and checking email at 9 p.m., then go to my website, yourcharlesalexander.com. If you've created the income you want but don't have the time freedom you deserve, then this is for you. And as always, if you don't, an angel may actually lose its wings. True story. Have a great day.